So this is going to be day 7? Is that where we are?
6 or 7. I think it's 7.
Anybody counting?
It's day 7, I think. Last night, I
Okay.
think we messed up last week, and I thought it was day 5, but
Yeah.
who's counting?
Yeah. I think this, as I said last time, I think this is probably the last time because I've definitely got I feel like I've got more than enough to work with. And as I said last time, I think having this number of sessions, I feel like I have uh, at least moderately kind of got the grip of DS. Definitely better than I was at the beginning.
I think that's
So,
right.
but yeah, and I think maybe if yeah, what I'll do, I think I said this before, Russ, but I'll say it again. But I think maybe if I after today, maybe if I could reach out in a couple of months just to see once I've had a chance to look through the chapter with my editors and figure out, what's working and what's not working, or maybe we need to um, need more information on something or to improve my understanding of something, we could have another chat.
Sure.
Right. Okay. Cool. Okay.
So number one.
Yeah. So beat number one, I was in a bookshop and I was I was stood in front of this shelf of new hardbacks, and but I was actually listening in on the conversation going on behind me um, between this guy and another guy behind the till, and I was listening in on their conversation, and um, the guy behind the counter, they were talking about a book that they were talking about a book that the guy was in, and he was asking whether this book was out. And then the guy behind the counter said the paperback is out. The beep went off as he said the paperback is out. And my experience was hearing the words the paperback was out and feeling worried for some reason. And I wasn't even at that, the books in front of me no longer, they weren't really there anymore. They were almost blurred because my focus was on the words, the paperback is out, and the conversation and the feeling of being worried. Which I'm not quite sure. Again, I know it doesn't matter, but I'm not quite sure why. The guy asking the question about is the book out, he sounded kind of like nervous and afraid and a bit sad almost. So I felt when the guy said the paperback is out, I felt worried. Uh,
And how does worrying come to you?
yeah, it's really weird. It was that was more of a physical sensation. It was more of a physical sensation than a cognitive thing. It was a feeling of worry and I want to say anxiety as well. Um, but it was definitely linked somehow to the guy behind the counter saying to the other chap, the paperback is out. Um,
and when,
yeah, it's really weird.
and when you say a physical sensation, what are you referring to?
Um, yeah, that's a really good question. It was sort of like a sort of tickly sort of light sensation in my chest that was quite unpleasant. Um, like maybe almost like I was falling a bit, but um, more of a sort of tickly, an unpleasant tickliness, if that makes sense.
And in your chest, on the surface of your chest?
It was kind of like between my chest and my stomach, I feel. It was kind of in the middle of my body.
And down deep inside or on the surface?
Um, it felt closer to the surface than down deep inside.
And by closer to your surface, do you mean on the surface or just beneath the surface?
Like, I'm not sure I know the answer to that. It could be both. It was kind of like hovering around the surface.
Okay. And we're talking about your thorax, I suppose, your chest.
Yeah.
So a region that's sort of this wide or
Yeah, like the first one, like it was quite wide.
okay.
Um,
And anything else to say about that?
no, I suppose I thought it was kind of interesting that all of the hardbacks in front of me, which I was actually looking at before and scanning the titles, they'd all just disappeared. It was just, it wasn't even like they were in focus anymore. Everything was just it was really blurred. I can't even be completely sure that I could even see it. I think maybe in retrospect, I'm thinking, oh, it was there, but it was blurry. But I actually, I was so focused on the feeling and the conversation behind me that I can't be completely sure that I could even see it anymore.
Okay. And between the listening to the conversation and the feeling, do those seem like the sort of the same thing? So I'm listening to the conversation with this anxiety, worry feeling, or is it? Can you divide it up and say, well, mostly I'm listening to the conversation, but partly I'm listening to feeling the feeling, or the other way around?
I think it was more the feeling than the conversation because the words the words the paperback was out is out had I'm not like they felt it that had felt like it evoked the feeling, and so the moment of the beep was there was more focus on that feeling in my midriff.
60-40 more, 90-10 more, 99-1.
Uh,
And I don't really care about the numbers. I just a little bit more, a lot more.
I'd say yeah, about 70-30.
70-30. So quite a bit more about the feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I think I'm good.
Okay.
I think so too. Yep.
Number 2.
So beep number 2. So I was in a sandwich shop and I was waiting for my partner to pay for her sandwich. I was stood like near the entrance. I wasn't actually getting anything. And so I was waiting for her to buy her sandwich and she was stood at the counter and I was looking I was actually looking at the eyes of the girl who was serving her. Um, I was noticing her eyes because well there was a lot of is it eyeshadow? Like there was a lot of makeup around her eyes, so her eyes kind of stood out for me like they stood out quite a lot. And so even though I was looking at my partner paying for her sandwich, my actual focus was on the eyes of the girl serving her. And I was just looking at her eyes. Yeah.
And
Probably shouldn't tell my partner
sure, I'm sure it was the makeup, right?
that.
So could you say more about how the eyes are present?
Um,
And
it was,
is it the eyes or the eyeshadow?
it was the eyes more than the eyeshadow, but it was also there was also the eyeshadow, but I think it was more the eyes than the eyeshadow. They were quite like big brown eyes, and there was something about the shape of them that drew my attention. They kind of like curved up quite a lot on the outsides. So yeah, there was something kind of I don't know, like there was something about the shape of them that I was drawn to.
So we've talked a little bit now about, you know, how brown her eyes were, the makeup, the curve of the outside of her eye is sort of is so and so is my experience just I'm looking at her eye, I'm seeing her eyes, or I'm sort of zeroed in her eyes, or is there a particular part of this that is drawing my attention? I'm into the color, or I'm into the shape, or
I feel like it was kind of all those things. Like I suppose on the whole, I was looking at her eyes and noticing the eyes. Um, I suppose I want to say that the features that I was noticing, the curved up and the eye shadow, they were that was kind of secondary to me just looking at her eyes and noticing her eyes.
so I'm looking at
Um,
her eyes that happens to be brown
yeah.
and curved upwards and stuff, rather than I'm into the a
Um,
certain part of it or something like that.
yeah, maybe. I'm not completely sure if the other stuff was kind of just like a fact of the universe and that I was or that it was like me just thinking back on it. It was yeah, I don't know. I think the main thing was I was just looking at the eyes and um it's difficult. There is a part of me that thinks that like the eyeshadow and the curved nature of them is me thinking back on why I was noticing them as opposed to the real reason, which is that I was just noticing them. Um, there was something about the size of them, like they were quite big and they were very open on my partner. So um, yeah, but I mean, the experience was just very much just being focused on the eyes. I wasn't really aware of anything else at the time.
I think I'm good.
Me
So
too.
yeah.
Number three.
So number three, so I was walking home and um, I was thinking about this new cat food that I ordered earlier on in the day, and um, the beep went off as I was thinking I was trying to figure out if selling fresh cat food is a good business idea. Um, uh, it was a strange one because I've written down here that I mean I've written down expanding and pushing because there was a feeling the experience was of um, there was a kind of like a pushing feeling in my mind, an expansive feeling, like but it was tiring. Um, and I had a sort of very, very blurry image of a city in my head at the same time. Um, yeah, I mean that was basically the experience of me of the beep catching me thinking about whether or not this is selling cat food's a good business idea. Um, yeah, it's kind of it was a hard one to jot down notes about because it was yeah, but I've put yeah pushing and expanding because there was this very strange internal cognitive feeling of pushing and expanding. Um,
And pushing and expanding, is that in my head? Is that what I understood?
yeah,
And,
yeah,
and
it very much felt like a cognitive thing, and it was kind of like it was kind of tiring as well. Um,
and by cognitive, do you mean
uh,
part of the thought process, or do you mean this as a physical expanding that's related to the thought process? Does this feel like a physical expanding?
no, it felt more like a part of the thought process. Um, but yeah, uh,
So something about the thought process itself felt expanding, pushing something.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
when we say that's in my head, does that feel physically in my head, or do I really mean it's mental?
yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I mean, it just felt like it was a part of my consciousness at the time. Like my being at the time, if that makes sense, was a sort of pushing and expanding feeling with a very blurry image of a city, um, which had come off the back of, oh, is setting up a fresh cat food business a good idea? It was like I was trying to figure something out. The pushing and expanding was me trying to get somewhere in my head or in my consciousness, in my conscious experience, but I wasn't, felt like I wasn't going anywhere. It felt like I just had that sensation, which was a bit tiring.
And in my head and in my conscious experience, do those seem like the same thing? I really mean in my conscious experience, but I say in my head. I'm still trying to nail down
Yeah.
whether there's physicality involved in this experience.
Felt like it was more, yeah, I'd say more in my conscious experience as opposed to physically in my head.
Okay. And then there's the blurry image of the city. This is a visual experience,
Yeah,
imaginary visual experience. And what exactly do I see?
I saw a really blurry city from like a bird's eye view, but it was small. It almost looked like it was in a snow, what those things you shake up, the snow globe things. It almost looked like it was in a, it almost looked like it was like inside like a snow globe type thing. It was, it was so blurry and like indistinct that I mean, I knew it was a city, um, but it was just like it was like a mini blurry um, top of a city. Um,
And is the snow globe a metaphor or a description of your experience? Do I see a snow globe kind of a thing? Or is it just
no,
like one?
I say snow globe because it looked like it was so small and blurry. It looked like it was kind of inside. Um, it looked like it was inside a small sort of transparent sphere of something. So it looked kind of like a snow globe, but I wasn't thinking snow globe at the time.
So I'm seeing something constrained and spherical. Is that
Yeah. Yeah. It was like the top of a very blurry city that was like small and contained in something sort of transparent and spherical, which kind of reminded me a bit of a snow globe, but I wasn't thinking the word snow globe or even snow globe at the time. Um,
so something spherical and round, spherical and blurry? I meant to say. And
um, really weird.
and
I sorry.
does that seem to have a location, like in the middle of here or out there, or doesn't matter?
Um, yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
Didn't really felt like it had any real location. Um,
Okay. And then does all this seem like it's part of the thinking? So I'm in the process of trying to understand, trying to decide, trying to figure out if selling fresh cat food is a good idea. All this is part
yeah,
of that?
yeah, even the image of the very blurry sort of mini city, like that that did feel like it was connected to the overall thought process, because it's difficult because I wasn't when I was thinking is this a good business idea? I was it's difficult this because I'm not sure this was really caught in the moment of the beep, but I I feel like the reason I had that image of the city is because I was thinking about like deliveries, like where in the city
Right.
you could deliver to. Um, but I don't know if that's just me again trying to explain it, or like
Right.
that's a presupposition. Um, it could be like yeah, it might have nothing to do with that. But there's a part of me that thinks that that's why I was thinking of a city, because I was thinking about where you could get it delivered and things like that.
Excuse me. And does the thought process itself still seem to be going on? So it would be fair to say I'm thinking about whether it's a good business idea, and sort of at the same time I feel this pressure, and sort of at the same time I see this snow globe, all all seemingly part of this thought process.
Yeah, yeah. It didn't feel like there was a separation between all those things. It felt like they were all kind of going on, in a very sort of I want to almost say like kind of like a messy way. Like it wasn't they were just there. I wasn't compartmentalizing them or anything.
Okay. Then I think I'm good.
I just wanted to clarify that the mental pushing expansive cognitive thing, is that I guess is what I said, calling this a pushing expansive cognitive thing, is that sort of the main feature of the experience, or is that a mental pushing expansive thought process?
Um, um, I feel like more the second one that you said was kind of a thought, felt like a process. It felt like it was an active thing. Um, but it was yeah, it felt like it was the same part. It was like it was like an equal part to the other parts of the experience.
I guess my question is, I understood the sort of the context of this beep is I'm thinking about whether the cat food business is a good one or something like that. And so is that to say that that thinking involves a pushing, expansive, tiring thing? Or is it just sort of like the cat food stuff, the cat food business thing is totally context. So all that's present to me is this
No, no, definitely the
pushing.
first one. It felt like it was very much linked to me thinking about whether or not the cat food business is a good idea. It was, I feel like me thinking that because it wasn't a verbal thing in my head where I was like, is a cat food business a good idea? The experience of that thought was the sort of pushing and expanding. Um, yeah, yeah. So I mean, it was linked to it was yeah. It's interesting actually because it's when I verbalize the idea or the experience, it makes sense. But then when I think of the actual experience of is a cat food business a good idea, wasn't anything like that. It was the pushing and expanding and the weird blurry city and um, yeah,
That is what makes life interesting.
yeah, and but it's it's like you guys have been saying, it's there's 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 not enough, or I would say like apart from what you guys are doing, like there's just like next to no real exploration of that, even though that's the experience.
Right. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it really is. Yeah, gosh. Anyway,
Number 4.
so number 4, Number four, I was walking up the stairs um, of my building on the way to my flat, and um, I was about to. I had my keys in my hand, and I was about to unlock to open the door to my flat. Well, I suppose you guys would say apartment. Uh, and the beep went off as I was looking down at the carpet on the stairs, and I was looking at a hole in the carpet that was kind of faded and shredded, and I was just looking at it for like a few seconds before I put the key into the lock.
So is this my beep or Amber's beep? I wasn't sure how we're coordinating this. I'm
I I can ask. It doesn't matter. I had some questions anyway.
We'll go for it, Amber.
Okay. So I just to clarify, so is looking at the whole, is that part of your experience, or is that kind of a fact of the universe? And what I'm really interested in is the fading, shredded quality.
So I feel like looking at the whole was the main part of the experience. I'd say like a secondary part was noticing that it was faded and shredded around the edges of the hole.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is this something that you're seeing out there in the real world?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I'd seen it before, even though it's quite a big hole and it's just outside of the front door. But there wasn't any like feeling or thinking going on while I was looking at it. I was
Okay.
just,
No, go ahead.
yeah, no, I just, yeah, I don't know. I was just looking at it. I wasn't even like annoyed that there was a big hole in the carpet outside. I was just noticing it.
Okay, and then could you just clarify to me what it is that you see that you're looking at?
So I see a sort of a fade. So the carpet is like salmon pink, like a faded, but it's a really faded color. So a faded salmon pink carpet, and then a hole that's about the size of an apple, uh, and then where the carpet should be, there was just this sort of black and grey, sort of streaky something or other underneath. And then around the edges, there was sort of grey and white sort of shredded bits of material.
Okay.
It was very much, yeah. I mean, I was definitely, I mean, I must have been looking at it for longer than I thought, because it was very much, that was the experience, just seeing all of that.
Okay, so your experience is of seeing really this whole thing with the carpet and the hole is the size of an apple and all this stuff. But really my attention is on the hole and the shreddedness or is
Mostly
it
mostly the whole, but then I'd say like, so maybe like 80% the whole, but then like 20% the shredded and the grey, sort of the coloring and the features around it.
okay.
I'm good.
Me too.
Number 5?
So I want to skip number 5, if that's all right. And I didn't get a sixth beep today. I started a little bit later, so it's just the 4 beeps today.
Okay. Well, good. So let's plot some strategy about what we're actually going to do here then. And
Yeah.
And there are several possibilities. One is, as you know, I put some videos on the web of these kinds of interviews, and I'm interested in knowing whether you think that would be an interesting thing, whether you would find that a good idea or a bad idea or an indifferent idea, were to put some of these interviews.
Yeah, I'm happy for you to put them to put them online. Is that because I think because do you mean with the other ones you've got on your website?
Yeah, and I haven't figured out. I haven't really applied myself to thinking about whether we would want to put the whole deal or a couple of days of it, or
Yeah,
the.
I mean,
I'm thinking maybe I've overwhelmed the reader, the viewer, or whatever, by putting the whole set of on. So maybe I should streamline it a little bit and put like I guess I've already sent you a transcript for like the second day or something like that. I believe.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you've been sending me the videos as well. Yeah, I'm totally happy. Like for you to put them online, Russ.
Okay,
That's
well,
fine.
I appreciate that, and the reason is it comes back to what you were saying or we were saying a few minutes ago that there's really nobody but us that's doing it, and so I think it's a contribution for us to say, well, you know, if you really are interested, this is what you find. This is the kind of thing, not with no specific interests. You know, this is a guy, and this is the way his experiences happen to be at these particular moments. And
Yeah, it's really important to like report this research because as I said, because like not I mean not enough people are doing it. I don't actually think I can't. Yeah, I'm not sure anyone but you guys are doing it at least in this way.
I think
I mean
that's right. I think that's right.
I mean I've read a little bit about experience sampling and some other studies, but not in this way. And I've noticed in the other things I've read that again they frame it in such a way that it's blurring the reality of the finding, or it's if that makes sense. It's not as raw as the data that I suppose you're collecting with this method. That makes
Well, I'm
sense.
not sure what kind of reading you're referring to, but I think you're right about that. That there are very few people, or maybe none, who are trying to actually look at everyday experience as it actually occurs, which
Yeah,
seems like it ought to be sort of the starting point of experiential science.
yeah. I think I can't remember who it was, but I think I read one thing about a group of people that they had like an app on the phone and you'd have to but you had to at random points of the day you had to but instead of giving your experience or your thoughts you had to pick a category of thoughts that it's in this category or that category which was just again just doesn't seem like it's fulfilling the criteria of their study rather than actually discovering something objectively about the mind.
And I think that's actually true. I think if you really care about experience, you need something like a very fast rise time beep. And so far, I don't think there aren't any apps that I know of that would do that. So, for example, I doubt that if you were a participant in that study, you would reporting I was seeing the hole in my carpet, you know, because
Exactly.
2 seconds later, the hole in the carpet is going to be gone, or the expanding pressure of trying to figure out about whether cat food is a good idea. When
Yeah.
you take a few more steps down the street, that is going to be gone for you like a dream on waking,
Yeah, exactly.
and
I would,
yet that is, I think, as close as we can get to what's actually going on in your experience.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, yeah, definitely. It's really interesting. Um, yeah, I think, I mean, I was thinking with the other thing I read, I was thinking, well, I would, like you just said, you'd miss all of the really interesting things, and I would have ended up just maybe thinking of just categories that
Right,
completely avoid the experience itself.
right. And I would say I started out using categories. But the first sampling studies that I used, I gave people beepers and asked them to categorize their thoughts and whatever. And 50 years ago, and I came to the conclusion that wasn't very interesting because they were my categories, and there was no reason to believe that you would apply my categories in the same way that I would understand my categories. And out of being bluntly, or as bluntly as I can be honest with myself about that, emerged what we're doing now.
Yeah, no, I suppose, yeah, because it's like, I think that one of the biggest things I've learned from this is that individual experiences are not just totally unique, but there is a depth to them that we don't think about enough. We don't scrutinize or analyze enough. And like you said, we kind of avoid it. There's a human tendency just to completely move away from the actual experience and think about something else that's unrelated.
Right. That is what's interesting.
Yeah.
So I think that the three of us, and you can participate in this too if you wanted to, Joe. It takes more time, but the three of us should probably do a green meeting about what we call a green meeting about these samples, which is to say we would go back and reawaken. And our green meeting is basically to confront all the samples that we've got, which we've got 30-ish samples or something like that, and we go back through those samples and try to reawaken our understanding of what those were all about. And we call it a green meeting because we write a very short, what we call a caption, that happens to be in green font, and so that we can so we can keep track of what's going on, and then we might write some kind of a characterization on the basis of that of, well, these are the kinds of experiences that we saw with Joe, that there were so many that are inner seeings, and of those inner seeings, sometimes they were blurry and constrained, and sometimes they were whatever. But I think that at least the three of us ought to do that, and if you wanted to be a part of that, we could arrange that, but it's a couple hours worth of work, and
I think that sounds really interesting. I'd be up for that. If do you guys have like a time frame in mind that you would work to, or is it?
I would say for if you're going to be involved, we would do it the same way as we've been doing it, which is to say we will decide here when we're going to do that. And basically, I'll share my screen and we'll go back. So we've written a description of every beep contemporaneously. I don't know whether I've ever sent those to you. Probably haven't, but at the end of every sampling day, we've written a description of each beep. On that day, we have written a description of that beep and passed it amongst ourselves, and the rest of us have commented on it and said, well, no, this isn't what I thought he said, or whatever. And we have those, what we call contemporaneous descriptions of your experience. And so we would go back through those, and the object would not be necessarily just to think of those descriptions as being good, although we've tried to make them good, but we would bring our collective consciousness to bear on those experiences, and if need be, then we'd go back and look at the videos so we don't any individual sample. The object is not to refine the description so much as it is to get to Joe's experience at the moments of the beeps that we've looked at.
Yeah, I think that would be valuable.
I do think I was to stress, I do think it's interesting because what we do in that, it's always pointing back to the experience. I think it's easy to hear when we think of data or data cleaning or whatever, at the stage we're at, to make it sound like what we're going to do is to categorize, as we talked about, right? Like, these are the 7 things of Joe's experience, and we're going to put all the beeps into these 7 categories. And that's not what we do in this meeting or in this process. Really, all it is conversations around clarifying, what were sort of the salient characteristics that, if you wanted to say, you gave Joe this random beeper and you beeped him at random times, and what did you find, right? Like in those random moments, sort of what does that look like? We would want to create a description that's faithful to that, right? So if when we go back, maybe we'll have something to say about maybe Joe had a lot of inner seeings, and maybe those inner seeings were there's something notable about that, right? Like again, the blurriness or perspective or whatever. it's not that we are coming in saying we have to write about perspective or have to write about this, but we're going to say, well, if that's what we find and that's what emerges from reconsidering all the samples, then we'll have something to say about that. But I think it is very different. It's a very different process than a lot of what it looks like across a lot of different other studies, I think.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. I think as well we could would also give us a chance maybe to think about because I remember we noticed at one point that I was sort of focused on words weirdly. There were quite a few of my beeps were focused on words, so I suppose
So that is exactly what this process allows us. So as we go through, we will now we've seen all the samples. We can say, well, this was weird about words, or it wasn't weird. Maybe we thought it was weird at the time, but now it isn't. Or now we can see, well, here this is beep 2.4 was about words, and beep 3.1 was about words, and we can put those all together and try to understand what we mean by weird about words, or whatever.
okay.
And we might, and the green meetings very often take more than one green meeting. So, but we'll figure that out as we go. So, what they do, the real meeting, the real heart of the green meeting is that it provides an occasion for trying to have intelligent conversations about the samples that we've had. And
yeah, an opportunity to process and think about the findings, I guess.
That's right. That's right. So we've collected the data, and now we're going to try to understand it, I guess, is maybe for a better word. And then the data is Joe's experiences, so we're going to try to figure out what was going on with them.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
The conversations are usually interesting.
Yeah, I bet they are. Great. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I will send you the video for this, and
see you next Friday.
See you next Friday.
Yep.
So much, guys. Good day. Bye.
Take care.
Yeah.